and good afternoon again from Oslo, She Conference 2024, and another panel discussion using the Listen, Learn, Act framework. And this topic is a topic that probably everyone, no matter where we are, can relate to. It's about the generational gap and how we bridge it, and how do we help grow business by using all generations involved. I'm joined by three experts on the topic. We figured we have at least one generation Z and a couple of X's in here, so we have the perspective going forward. So, Ife, welcome to Norway, welcome to this stuff. Talk a little bit about yourself and why you are such a passionate advocate for generational gap and how we bridge the gap between us.
Hello everyone, yes, I'm Ife Obasa. I am a fourth year law student at the University of Southampton. I'm also a public speaker and an education consultant. So what that means is I help organizations, business leaders who per se maybe want to learn a bit more about how they can leverage the value of their younger employees. And the reason why this topic is so important to me is I've seen the value that every generation can bring to the workplace. I've been fortunate enough to work in the workplace and see how it can be done. So I think, why not, as a Generation Z, bring my input, and I have a newsletter where I discuss all of this.
Super. We'll get into that discussion as well. And welcome, Øystein. You head up an organization in Norway called Abelia.
Yes.
Talk a little bit about yourself and the organization and why this topic is key to getting growth going in business.
Sure. Thank you. So very briefly, Abelia is a trade and employers association for technology and company-based companies in Norway. And so we come from this both from a, you could say, political or policy perspective, and also we try to help our members to be as good employers as they can be. And if you look at this from a sort of very macro perspective in Norway, but also throughout Europe, there is a growing demand for people, enough people with the right skills. So we call it a competence gap, and this is very true for our members. Some of them struggle to find capital, but more importantly, they struggle to find enough of the right people.
Excellent.
And so we need to use the whole team. We have to include everybody. And to me, this issue or the topic of age is perhaps a bit of a blind spot when it comes to the diversity agenda. So that's why I think we need to discuss this more.
Excellent, excellent. And welcome, Tove. You recently, your company got a Good Reward award for working in diversity and inclusion part as well.
Yep.
Talk a little bit about your background, your company, and how you involve yourself in the topic of bridging this gap.
Thank you very much. So my name is Tove Selnes. I'm Chief People Officer at Storebrand. Storebrand is mainly actually coming from pension and life insurance. So we are in it for the long run, as we say. And now also very large, the Norwegian largest private asset manager. So we really like to invest in companies that push the world forward. And when it comes to bridging the generational gap, I think society is very much kind of that people from different generations are not spending so much time together. You see it already when you grow up. The kids, they play with the ones in their same age span. And when I grew up, I was a scout. And I think scouts have, it's one of the few activities where people are together in small groups from different age. And I always loved that interaction where people can learn from others. Some have long experience, some have new experience and new fresh eyes on things. So I really believe that the workplace is one of the few places where generations come together, and we should really see opportunities there, because we see so much echo chamber,
Yes.
and also the polarization that we see, that people don't like to disagree. My daughter is a teacher, and she told me yesterday that there is some kind of new report coming out showing that the young, the teenagers, they don't like to, they are not so curious, and they don't like to disagree. Okay. And we need to learn that.
Super duper. And I think that one of the things that is for sure that connects us in the She Conference is age. We will all move through life.
Yes.
Yeah.
And we pick up learnings. There's a lot of stuff going on as well. So it's one of those things that we need to address, and we need to employ everyone for many reasons, not only for business. But if you look at from your perspective, Ife, when you and your fellow Generation C look at the workplace as you enter, what are some of the things you're seeing, and what are the obstacles, and what can we, as Generation X's in this case, what can we listen to and help to make you leap into the workplace faster and better?
I'd say one thing for sure with my generation, Generation Z, we're not afraid to call out, things. And what we're looking for in the workplace or in employers is that intentionality, the authenticity there. And at least in the UK, a lot of young people now in the workplace, they're okay with moving if they feel like diversity and inclusion isn't met, if they feel values are not heard. So I'd say one of the obstacles is, like you mentioned, there isn't enough time we're spending together. So there's this mismatch where people are saying one thing and others are saying another thing, and no one is listening to each other. So I'd say an obstacle is that, but ways that we can help that is actually having hubs within the workplace, having groups or sessions where everyone can come together and brainstorm. That's picking up ground in the UK, and I think it can happen elsewhere as well. But those are ways we can start to tackle that issue. Because one thing I've noticed with us is we're okay to speak up. We believe this.
But before you speak up, are you listening to people who have taken the journey before you enough? Curious.
So, if I'm to be honest, some do, some don't.
Okay.
In my instance, I understand the value and the experience that older people bring. So I'm very accustomed to spending time with older people to get more knowledge. Others don't. And I think that's where we can bridge that gap with, actually, before you do step out and speak, why don't you learn from others that are older than you? And vice versa. But I think in my experience, it's helped because I spend so much time with older people. I'm able to be a bit more informed with my opinions. Whereas with others, they aren't as informed because I know best and I'm going to move forward, which isn't the right, I'd say, path to take, but this is where that intergeneration comes in.
Interesting. And the word older immediately.
Sorry.
I'd like to prefer the word more experienced.
More experience.
So, but then again,
We don't know if age is more experienced,
no,
though.
we don't. But at least I'd like to
Exactly.
say. I tell myself that I have. Tove, from a Storebrand perspective, how do you see the bridging between the new people coming into the workplace and the people that have been there for a while? What are some of the tensions you're seeing? Is it improving, or are we still stuck in a roundabout?
I think we need to really motivate for curiosity and openness. And actually there HR it has an important role. We shouldn't talk about we shouldn't put kind of frameworks on people. We shouldn't put groups or something. We should, what can I learn from you, and be open, because I think it's difficult, and it's very easy to brag about one group and another group feels, inferior, or is becoming not so open, and so on. So we've been working on that.
Yeah.
We want new digital competence, so the finance industry have done a change there, and we got to know from people who had worked in the industry for a long time, but what about us? And then we needed to change the rhetoric. So I think actually words are important.
They are important.
Yes.
And Øystein, from your perspective, looking into the business of knowledge and IT and everything, what do you see from your standpoint?
Well, first of all, I think we can all relate to the challenge of seeing the other perspective, or not investing in understanding the other perspective. So this may go for young people, but of course it also goes the other way. So it's a matter of sort of attitude. Then I think there are a lot of myths out there. We tend to assume things about each other. In a diversity sort of context, we assume things because we look a certain way, or we have a certain age, or whatever. So being more interested in actually the individual and what he and she or she can bring to the table is, of course, I think crucial. So I've seen also that there was a recent study that showed that in Norway, only 2% of our companies actually consider age as a relevant sort of diversity factor. which is very strange to me. I think it has to be included in the diversity agenda. And that is probably one of the challenges going forward, working with our strategies and plans for more diversity. We also have to acknowledge that age is an important factor that provides both opportunities and of course, particular challenges as we go through life, as you say.
And in the initial part of the conversation, we talked about the fact that we aren't talking as much to each other.
Yeah.
We tend to talk to our own echo chamber.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And the way to kind of listen into what they're talking about. One of the things that can help us and also divide us is technology. From your perspective, just, you did this report, transformation report that you issue, and you show countries how they work.
Yeah.
The role of technology and how that impacts the way we talk across generations at the workplace.
Yeah. Obviously, technology is becoming more and more defining for the workplace. Again, talking about myths, I think there's a tendency to think that all young people are so tech savvy. The older generation is not. So that's maybe one issue that we don't need to assume things, even though there are traits, but still in the big picture, I think we can realize that we have different challenges, we are at different points, and bottom line, we all are going through several technology changes through our careers, and we need to be curious, we need to be willing to invest in our own competence, work with lifelong learning and so on, and this goes for everybody. But of course also for the more senior employees, they need, when they pass 50, 55, to continue this progress to keep learning and to still be relevant with their competence.
Tove, are we using age as a indicator of energy, curiosity, and by that way we're making an unconscious or conscious bias about I'm done, move him or her out of the system? Are we doing that?
I think we're doing it to a lesser degree, actually. So I think it's a myth we need to bust, and I think that's really important. We say that digital native is not an age. You can choose to be digital native, you can kind of move into that space. And I think it's important that we as individuals really lean forward, try to learn new technology, but also for the workplace and the society to really kill those myths.
And words matter.
Words matter.
If we shift from talking digital native to knowledge native, intelligence native, because
digital savvy.
Yeah, exactly. How does that work? Because apparently, obviously, when you meet yourself at some point 10 years from now, you'll know more, you'll be wiser.
Yeah.
How can we help bridge this gap by maybe moving away from do you really know digital really well to moving towards experience, knowledge, failure, success? How does that help Generation C understand the value of talking to people further in life?
Oh, it helps a great deal. And I'd say ways that we can implement that within the workplace then is having programs. A lot of Generation Z, millennials, want to get promoted quicker now. And ways that we can help that in terms of this knowledge as well is having like leadership programs or incubator hubs within the workplace where you're investing into their skills, investing into their knowledge that then aids their development throughout the
But
workplace.
let me ask, why do they want to get promoted faster? What's this speed thing here? Is there a clock running?
I wouldn't say there's a clock. I think people are just a bit more, I want to get my hands, I don't want to speak for a whole generation, but people want to get their hands in as many pots, try out new things. And I think there's this new sense of intentionality now, this new idea that actually I can, lead within the workplace. I can be more than just a 9 to 5. I can also do a side hustle. And I think that's where all this idea of promotion comes in. Okay. I can be bigger than just, I'm working 5 years at the same place. If I can do 2 years here and move somewhere else and I'm promoted, why not?
So this speed here, this I'm being promoted too slowly, Tove, from your perspective, is that something you see a lot, and how do you respond to that when you talk to people that have this lightning speed career path objective?
No, I think in Storebrand actually we try to redefine what a career is, and we say that we want to invest in your competence together. It's like a stock, and let's make return on investment for both sides, and really focusing on. You build your career by being exposed to new tasks, and it's not necessarily climbing up that ladder, but kind of experiencing more. And I think we need to, as leaders and organizations, understand the hunger for new learning. And we see that hunger for new learning is, for the new generations, more important actually than hunger for higher salaries. So the learning has become more important, and we need to make it explicit, because a lot of the learning happens in the day-to-day, but we need to make sure we appreciate it, and make it really explicit that this is what's happening. But it might be that in UK this is going a little bit faster. I just came back from London, so...
I just want to say that I like the investment metaphor when we talk about experience and competence, because it's very important. So when you use that term, it reminds us that so the company, the owners, have to invest in their employees. But I think also we need to remind our employees that it's good for them also to invest time and energy in developing the skills in learning. And I think, broadly speaking, many people are motivated to learn more. But again, as we see, at least in the Norwegian context, that it's still a struggle to get people to spend extra time on new courses, whether it be during the work hours or after, and so on. There is something we have to do also about this motivation. And then thirdly, I think also society, in other words, the government, has to see this as an investment. You talked about our transition barometer. We're looking at, is Norway future-proof? Are we able to cope with this digital and green transition that we have to go through? And the answer to a certain extent is no, partly because we don't have enough of the right competence, and we need to invest more in that. So also I think the government needs to come up with more incentives for the individual and for the companies, whether it be tax incentives or what in order to also develop this further.
And if the learning part, to build on the career versus the learning part, talk about, if I am starting off my career and I see employers with a great learning path for me versus a career path, if we divide them two, how would that resonate with Generation Z?
Really well. I think in my experience, having a career where it's bigger than just my job, I'm learning on the go as well, always resonates well. So it literally ties in with the point that I said, where it's investing into the skills of that particular employee. I think resonates very well with Generation Z. We're inquisitive, we're curious. We are constantly looking for something that's different, cutting edge. And I know a lot of young people who are working that also have side hustles, running businesses. And that also comes from this desire to do something bigger than. So if in a workplace you're encouraging them to learn more, to acquire new skills, of course they'd want to stay there longer. And I think that's where all these lovely ideas of entrepreneurship comes in, where you're fostering entrepreneurship within the workplace. I think is a really great idea for Generation Z.
And you obviously have something neurologically in the right order, because you guys are young. For us that are older, how do we stimulate this curiosity, this energy, this hunt for new stuff as well? Any experience from your end, Tove, in Storebrand? How do we get people who are senior, experienced people to continue to have the youthful curiosity? Any experience there?
I think it's important the way we talk around it, that it's expected. We show that it's fun and it's inspiring. I mean, it really gives you energy, and we try to have kind of learning arenas where people share. So we say that share is the new care, and really focusing on making the learning agenda part of the everyday life. But and of course there are people that choose to kind of I've done my part of learning, and
I'm done. But Øystein, from an education perspective, we talked a little bit before we met. How important is education, not just as you enter the workforce, but during the workforce, what do you see companies that succeed? What are they doing? What do they need to do?
I think it's extremely important, and as I said, it's an ongoing investment that the individual and the company has to do, and clearly those who are succeeding and those who are in the long run, they have this as a very clear part of their strategy. They deliberately invest in competence and in building competence. And also I would like to add a point building on what you just said related to the motivation of the older employees, because I think
Older or
older,
experienced?
yes. Hopefully even more experienced, but we can say old. We are getting old.
Okay.
Sorry. So I think that we have to look at to take down the risk for the individual to develop and to gain new experience. Because if you've been in a company for 25 years, you have your specialty, you know that you have some competence that is very important for the company. And are you really willing to hand on that experience and that insight? Or is there a danger that you will become sort of irrelevant yourself? So making very sure from a managerial point of view that you build this culture where no, sharing is caring. Yeah. Sharing is caring not only for your colleagues but even for yourself.
And as we become even more experienced, and it looks like we are going to be actively experiencing stuff much longer because we're going to be in the workplace for a longer period of time. What would you say to people that need to reskill themselves? How can they move faster and better into trying to get reskilled so that they can be relevant for 5 more years? What's...
I think find your way of learning, your learning style. Many people like to learn from others, so find the smart people that know something about it. And I think that's, what is your learning style? Is it by testing and checking out and trying out, or is it by seeing others and discussing with them, get good tips from a mentor or something like that, or is it really diving into the books and all the videos and so forth? So I think it's finding your way of learning and maybe seek some advice on that. And then we haven't talked about it yet, but I'm really into artificial intelligence.
Yes, what does that mean?
That, maybe will change the whole arena. What was an important skill might become obsolete because technology will fix that. So what are the new skills? So this is now a topic for all generations, and it's really interesting.
And if you go to the thought that sometime soon you may be working with your grandmother or your grandfather at the same company, how do you see that multi-generational presence in the same company? Is that something that you think is going to be weird as the generational span increases?
No, I think actually what I write about so much in my LinkedIn newsletter is that multi-generational workplace is actually really lovely to see. If it's to become, at least when I'm around. It's so rich in perspective, so rich in diversity and value. And I think that is where we can get all these ideas stimulating, skills gap are closed, reskilling, I guess, is discussed. We can have reverse mentoring in its richness. So I think a multi-generational workplace is really what we should be striving for, because everyone is then able to learn from each other within that area, within that place.
One of my experiences from this is that when young people do not see a career path or a development plan, and they see, for example, me stuck in a chair for a role, I want to experience it, but if I don't see myself moving forward or a path forward, how important is job rotation or career planning to help not only Generation C, but also all people involved in organization? Any reflections?
I'm thinking about when you move into the later stage of your career, you also may be, we talked about fear, and you actually feel, okay, I'm 55 now, am I actually able to find a new job outside this organization? What are the barriers? What are the risks of trying something new? And if the only sort of final stage of your career you see as being where you are,
hunker down,
it's a given how it will turn out, and then people behind you or under you will just leave out because they say he's stuck there for another 5 years or 10 years. So let's move on. So we need to have very concrete strategies also for planning that phase together with the employees and with the managers.
And let's move to the topic of artificial intelligence and how intelligence becomes cheaper and faster and everything as well. How does the smartest thing in the room change the game?
I think it will completely change, and I think we all have questions around what will it change. We've seen kind of something, but the scenarios and the word is still out. But I think that critical thinking, creativity, and I like to talk about radical human. That is it. So being a good colleague, a good person, focusing on what's best for society and for the people around you, those skills will become much more important, and kind of knowing your numbers will maybe become less important, and fixing a lot of stuff for you. So that's my thoughts around that.
The emotional side, the human side will still be, I think, eternally relevant and will be what distinguishes us from the technology.
Yeah.
And when you and your group look into the workplace, given the artificial intelligence surge, is that changing the way you look at the career?
Not necessarily. I'd say what it would demand, though, is that humanness. Because now we have the surge of AI and technology, we really do require leaders to be human, to be authentic. That's really what the generation will be looking out for. And you see in everything, in this desire that can we be intentional about whatever it is that we do. And so I think what it really would mean is, now that we've seen the rise of AI and technology, leaders need to be more human, more authentic in how they approach things.
Do you think that more senior experienced people are more afraid of what AI will do than maybe younger people?
I would be very hesitant to sort of say this is how it is overall. There perhaps may be a tendency, but thinking about this theme going into this conversation, I had the reflection that when I look back at my 30 years as a manager, I see that there are other traits to a human being or to a colleague that defines whether they are efficient or not efficient and good contributors in the team, other things than their age, whether it be young or old. So, but of course we need to know that as elder employees we have perhaps a tendency to say that, okay, I've done my bit and I've done my thing. So yeah, we need to challenge ourselves, but overall I think this is also something for the younger generation to not get stuck in their own sort of worldview.
And based on what you're saying, Tove, it seems as if this extending motivation, extending my contribution to work life is an important thing to talk about. It's not, I'm not done.
No.
This is a lifelong thing. Any views on how people in your organization who stay on for a longer time stay curious, stay motivated?
Yeah, I think that's the silver bullet. What is that? I think it's inner motivation. I think it's something about personality, but I also think that we can enhance that in the culture and really, make sharing and learning the curiosity and the energy in that. So I think it's both an organizational issue to solve and an individual issue to solve. But having fun and seeing the purpose of it, I think it will be really cool. And I see more and more people in the end of their career that really don't want to leave, right?
No, it's a good call. And on the ending note here, you mentioned at the beginning of the conversation, Øystein, the 2% of ageism as well. Do you think we'll be able to get maybe the most fundamental of all ways we're different? We're all the same in terms of aging. Do you think we'll start shifting and understanding and using the generational span more actively than we've done so far in the equity discussion?
To be a bit cynical, I think it's fair to say that money talks, and when the owners and the board realize that they are not able to achieve their financial or organizational goals without having a much more active and much more proactive diversity strategy, including age.
Yeah.
I think this is moving it forward, and we see it now with the green shift. When the owners actually realize that we will not be in business if we are not compliant with the new needs we need to do, then things are happening.
Excellent, excellent. Great discussion, a discussion for the ages apparently, and we've touched on topics that each and every organization needs to address on. One thing is for sure, we're all going to age through the work life, and being able to exploit the learnings, experiences in the Listen, Learn, Act framework will certainly create more business opportunities than the opposite. Thanks for joining, and continue the discussion in your organizations. Thank you.
Thank you.